afternoon, everyone. We're gathered here today on the traditional territories of the signatories to Treaty 7, and I'd also like to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. More specifically, we are also here in the riding of Calgary-Elbow, and I'm very pleased to be joined by the fantastic Alberta NDP candidate for Calgary-Elbow, Samir Kayande. For more than a month, the Albertans who live here have had no representation. That's tens of thousands of Calgarians with no voice. I've been out on the doorsteps with Samir and previously in my role as Premier and in the 2019 campaign as well. And I've come to know so many people who call this beautiful area of Calgary home. The people of Calgary-Elbow are moderate, sophisticated, thoughtful, well-educated, and they have strong opinions. And I was therefore extremely concerned to hear Danielle Smith's repeated comments this week that she intends, should she win, to call a by-election in a rural riding so she can enter the legislature, but that she will not call one here in Calgary-Elbow. The next likely premier of this province claims she has a mandate to pass unconstitutional legislation in the form of her extremely problematic Sovereignty Act. Yet she's scared to ask the people of Calgary-Elbow what they think about it? Denying the people of Calgary the opportunity to choose their next MLA while simultaneously seeking a seat elsewhere is profoundly undemocratic. It may or it may not be legal, but it certainly isn't what's right. In fact, allow me to be very, very clear on this. This decision is a complete slap in the face of the city of Calgary. If this is the kind of leadership we can expect from the Premier-elect, I am deeply concerned about what the next 6 or 7 months holds for all of us. We have critical issues facing our province, issues that require a leader who will listen and act accordingly to serve all Albertans, not just those she thinks might vote for her. We're facing an affordability crisis for families unlike anything we've ever seen in 40 years. The slowest wage growth in Canada. Our ambulances and our hospitals and our doctors' offices are teetering on the brink of collapse. We have class sizes of more than 40 kids. And we've had an absentee government focus more on saving their own jobs and petty political infighting than focusing on solutions and what matters. And so Samir and I are here today to call on whoever becomes Premier Thursday evening to grow a backbone, do the right thing, and immediately call the by-election in Calgary-Elbow. Now let me tell you just a little bit more about Samir before he comes to speak. He's a highly respected engineer, an analyst, and an expert on pipelines and fossil fuels. Today, he's a software and technology consultant. He's helped build a billion-dollar oil and gas data and analytics firm, and he sat on the board of the Pembina Institute. Samir is originally from Fort McMurray, and he's lived here in Calgary for 18 years, where he and his wife are raising 2 children. When Samir and I first started talking, he told me how distressing it was to have a child affected by long COVID, while the provincial government was trying to pretend COVID didn't exist at all. He was upset about a partisan curriculum that degraded the world-class public education system that he grew up with. He told me how the UCP was simply not up to the task of building a resilient energy economy, one that responds effectively to climate change while also providing good jobs and opportunities for generations to come. So Samir's is a voice that we need in the legislature and in government. And I am convinced that he will be a tremendous advocate for Calgary-Elbow, for Calgary, and for Alberta. And so with that, I'm pleased to have Samir offer his comments about the question of whether we should have a by-election in Calgary-Elbow as soon as possible.
Thank you, Rachel. That was very kind. And thanks to all the folks at the Alberta NDP who have welcomed me into my first foray in politics. I'm so grateful for all the Calgarians who welcomed me on their doorsteps over the past months. I was nominated in early March, and I've been knocking on doors ever since. I've talked to thousands of Calgary-Elbow residents. Rachel is absolutely right. Calgary families are stressed about the cost of living. Food, housing, gasoline, insurance, utilities. are all getting more expensive. In many cases, the UCP's own actions are making these costs worse for families. Meanwhile, Alberta workers have the slowest wage growth in Canada. It's not right. Canadian families are also extremely worried about the chaos the UCP has created in our healthcare system. So many healthcare workers live in Calgary-Elbow. Physicians who found it impossible to continue family practice under this government, side by side with people who don't have doctors anymore. People are deeply concerned about whether an ambulance will be there if they need one. They wonder how long they would have to wait outside the emergency room if they just went themselves. And they ask me, why has the UCP allowed things to fall apart like this? And many folks, especially if we get to talking about my background, they want to know what the long-term plan is for the economy. How are we going to build on the strengths of our energy sector? How are we going to build a resilient economy that creates exciting jobs and opportunities? And recently, when we're talking about our economic future, Calgarians from Glamorgan through Marda Loop to Lower Mount Royal are telling me how worried and deeply concerned they are about this ridiculous Sovereignty Act that Danielle Smith is touting. This is a surefire way to destroy investor confidence, destroy jobs, and stifle our economy at a critical moment. Our downtown in Calgary has suffered over the last decade, and Smith's reckless experiments in separatism would make it worse. But we can only do so much on the doorstep. It is essential the voices of these Calgarians are heard in the legislature. The next government cannot make decisions that affect the lives of tens of thousands of people who live here without them having their say. Elbow has a history of pragmatic, moderate representation. The kind that doesn't have a home in the UCP anymore. Smith would deny us that careful, sober voice at the very time that a radical agenda is on the table. It's an injustice. So my message is simple. To whoever becomes premier on Thursday night, call this by-election without delay. Now, I'm pleased to introduce one of the folks who lives right here, Karen Notley.
Thank you, Samir. Hello, my name is Karen Notley. I'm a counsellor and psychotherapist living in Elbow, as do my children and grandchildren. And it's, in fact, in my 80th year, I decided I would stop getting involved in politics and take what I considered an earned retirement from community involvement. But then I met Samir, and there was no option. I had to keep going and keep knocking on doors because I found Samir so impressive and so committed and so dedicated, and it's just very, very impressive, and the person I really want to represent Elbow in Edmonton. And it's very concerning that there is nobody for us to turn to at the moment. None of our concerns are being picked up by anybody. We're totally unrepresented, and it's quite worrying. So I endorse Samir fully. I think he's going to be a great person to represent us. He's got all the experience, the enthusiasm, the charisma, and empathy, and I'm very, very happy to be supporting him. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Karen, and thank you, Samir. So we're ready. We're ready for a by-election here right away. We are ready for a general election, whether that's in the coming weeks or in the spring. But one way or the other, the next government will only be around for about 7 months at the most. But in the meantime, it is unacceptable for the UCP to leave Calgary shorthanded during the next 7 or 8 months. There are critical issues facing the families in this community. We need a by-election without delay. So thank you, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Just a reminder for those joining us on the phones to use the *9 function, and for those joining us on Zoom to use the raise hand function to get into the question queue. First, we'll start if there's any questions in person. No questions in person, we'll go to the phones. Our first question will come from Dylan Short from the Calgary Herald. Go ahead, Dylan, your line is open.
Election in the coming weeks, and Samir, you're unsuccessful. Are you committed to running again in a general election in a few months' time?
If I win the nomination, absolutely.
Do you have a follow-up, Dylan?
Yeah, I apologize. There's a few hypotheticals that are attached to this, but if Danielle Smith is victorious tomorrow, there is a chance, although a very small chance, that she could run in a by-election in Calgary-Elbow. I guess, would you welcome that challenge to take on the new leader of the UCP head-to-head before a general election?
You'd better believe it.
All right, we'll go to our next question from Tom Vernon at Global News. Go ahead, Tom, your line is open.
Hi, Rachel, this one's for you. It's a little off topic. Obviously, Premier Jason Kenney's time is wrapping up. In the last 7, 8, 9 days, he's made 8, 9, 10 different announcements. Do you find this odd for an outgoing premier?
I would say, if regardless of whether he's outgoing or whatever his status is, what's probably oddest about what we're hearing from either Jason Kenney or Danielle Smith or Travis Taves or anybody else on that team is that nobody really seems to be talking about the issues that are most important to Albertans. Here in Elbow, for instance, in Calgary, Samir is out on the doorstep. We're on the doorstep all across the province. And what we hear from people is they're worried about the fact that the price of gas at the tank is going up at the very same time that the government is putting a tax back onto it. They're worried about the cost of their groceries. They're worried about finding a family doctor. They're worried about surgical wait times. And in the 97 different press conferences that Jason Kenney's had, he's managed to avoid talking about any of the things that are actually a priority for Albertans. And the same is true for pretty much every leadership candidate too. So to me, that's really the odd thing.
Do you have a follow-up, Tom?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right, our next question goes to Colleen Underwood from the CBC. Go ahead, Colleen, your line is open.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
I can now, yes?
Okay, great. Sorry, my questions were along the similar lines. We were at an event with Jason Kenney today. One of the things he mentions that he wished that he had been a bit stronger or a bit tougher with caucus, as other leaders had been in other provinces, where if somebody spoke out, they basically turfed him. And so that was, he said, one of his only, if he has one at all, regrets. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I would say that Jason Kenney, like Danielle Smith after him, started a pattern that Danielle Smith has not learned any lessons from, which is that he has been catering to a very small and extreme group of people in Alberta. And having catered to them and having encouraged many of them into his caucus, he's been unable to govern in a reasonable, pragmatic, forward-looking way. And Danielle Smith has taken that lesson and actually doubled down on it and is now actually promising to go further with it. So it's not about being tough with caucus. It's about deciding who it is you're there to represent and making sure that when you're campaigning, you're actually campaigning on the issues and the values of the mainstream of the province rather than playing sneaky little wedge politic games to bring people out to vote in leadership contests. When you do that, you become increasingly separated from the people of the province. And that's what we've seen with the UCP. And we've seen it with Jason Kenney. We've seen it with Danielle Smith. We've seen it through this whole UCP contest. And that's really the bigger issue here. Jason Kenney's problems come from the issues he chose to run on and the people he chose to run with.
Do you have a follow-up, Colleen?
Actually, it was more on the by-election. We did ask if he thought that there should be a by-election, and while he didn't want to comment, he thought that likely there will be. The new leader will call for a by-election in Calgary-Elbow.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't, is there anything that you can do to force their hand, or
Well,
is it worth it to you to do that?
I mean, it's a good question. I think we would certainly consider filing complaints in the appropriate forums, but I guess the problem is that in most cases, none of those forums, whether it be the courts or the elections CEO, none of them have a particularly speedy record. So, by the time they actually make a decision on it, we'll be into a general election. But what I will say is that it is would be an incredibly unprecedented and undemocratic act by the UCP to call a by-election in one part of the province while leaving another part of the province unrepresented. So we are here because we've heard from numerous sources and newspaper reports that Danielle Smith thinks she can get away with that kind of undemocratic decision. And we are here to tell her she cannot. And should that end up happening, I do promise you this, the people of Calgary-Elbow will hear a lot about it from us.
All right, we'll do one last pass for questions. Just a reminder for those on the phone to use *9 and for those on Zoom to use the raise hand function. We'll go back to Dylan Short from the Calgary Herald. Go ahead, Dylan. Your line is open.
Thanks. Yeah, just one question. From what we're hearing today, it sounds like you're expecting almost a Danielle Smith victory tomorrow. Is that what you're expecting, or what are you expecting to see tomorrow night?
Well, we don't really know. I think that it's just all been a lot of speculation. What I expect to see happen tomorrow night for sure is that whoever becomes leader is they will likely carry on focusing on the same issues that has been driving this UCP government and the UCP campaign from day one. Issues that are non-existent in the lives of most Albertans and unimportant to most Albertans. So they will continue to live in their little world and fight their little fights. And Albertans concerned about affordability, concerned about economic growth, concerned about our healthcare system and fixing the crisis there, will continue to be faced with a government that is not focused on their priorities.
Do you have a follow-up, Dylan?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Alrighty.
All right, we'll do one more pass for questions. And with no more on the line, we will wrap today. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Watching. Alberta's NDP is working hard to build Alberta's future and to build a future that involves all Albertans. The momentum is building. If you want to be part of it, join us at albertasndp.ca.